Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, bringing you another Beat Matt Batrep.
We work so you can play. MiniWarGaming's Beat Matt Batrep.
Joel here has challenged me to a game of Warmachine. We're going to do a 50-point game, Khador versus Cryx, and of course we're both bringing Colossals.
Oh yeah.
Because you can't play the game without Colossals now.
No, they're just awesome.
At least not at the 50-point level. You have to bring in one.
For sure.
So let's take a look at the scenario, the armies, as well as the deployment. Start by looking at my 50-point Khador army. Of course, I'm bringing my Conquest. Well, I should say we decided on that before the game. And I decided to bring Karchev the Terrible. Probably my least favorite caster now, but I wanted to try him with the Conquest. We got the Spriggan with his Bulldoze ability. We got a good old Juggernaut. It's just a nice solid 7 points. And the Conquest. Now he's normally 19 points, but this is a tier 4 list, so it's -1 to his cost. We got a minimum squad of MiniWar Demolition Corps, and we got a minimum squad of MiniWar Shock Troopers. Those were required for the tiered list. And just for fun, I decided to bring some Greylord Turnian 2 squads and a Colden Lord. I wanted to go with the theme of Karchev's tier 4 list, which will, you know, gives me a couple little benefits. Looking at Joel's Cryx army, he is bringing pDenegra. So just go to old Prime pDenegra with all of her awesome abilities. And the 12-point Deathjack. This guy is a monster, as you will see in the game. And then just a little Bone Jack right there. I can't remember which one this one is, but nothing special. And we got the Kraken. And with that, we have a full squad of Bane Thralls with their unit attachment, which gives them tough. And as long as their banner's alive, the banner gives them tough, and the officer gives them the ability to stand up after they've fallen down from being tough. And then this is actually a Scarlock Thrall, but he's proxying. And then he's got a Warwitch Siren there, and then we've got a min squad of Bile Thralls. So I had asked him to actually not go too infantry heavy because we didn't have a ton of time for the game. So that's why you're seeing his army being that way. And then the scenario we're playing is the assault scenario from the Steamroller 2013. So there's 2 flags in the middle, and you can control and or dominate your opponent's flag, but you can only dominate your own flag for control points. And in order to control a point, you have to have a model in base contact with it. If it's a model from a unit, the rest of the unit needs to be within 4 inches of it, and there needs to be no enemy model within 4 inches of that. Now, we don't count things that are inert or crazed war beasts or things that are fleeing. But seeing as both sides are mostly fearless, there won't really be anything fleeing. Now, to dominate an objective, you have to have your Warcaster in base contact with it. So the way that it works is at the end of the second player's second turn, that's when you start to add up the points. And so the objective that's closest to you, or the flag that's closest to you, that is your flag. And so you can only get a point by dominating that one, which means you have to have your Warcaster in base contact with it. And if you want to get more points, you have to control and or dominate your opponent's flag. If you control it, you get 2 points, and if you dominate it, you get 3 points. And the first person to 5 points wins. So he rolled off, and I got to deploy and go first. So, and I got to choose, and so I chose to go first, even though it knocked me back 7 inches, or 7 inches. When the 2 of the advantages I have is 1 to place 2 AoE cloud effects for 1 turn, and also that my MiniWar, they all get advanced moves. So that helped with the movement a little bit. So Khador turn 1, I give each of my jacks a focus. I could have actually not given one of them a focus because the Colden Lord has Power Booster, which allows him to give a jack a focus if he doesn't have one. The Shock Troopers move up and maintain their shield wall. Probably should have just run them, but it doesn't matter. The Juggernaut runs up, and then we have Karchev, who decides to... At first I showed that I gave him a focus, but I decided against that afterwards. He casts Sidearms on himself, which gives him a plus... It gives models in his battle group +1 defense for every other model in the battle group in base contact. Plus, they cannot be knocked down if they have another model in base contact with them from the battle group. So that's just to give a little bit of a defensive buff here. The Conquest runs up. This Spriggan runs up. Then the Shock Troopers run up. Or sorry, the Demolition Corps run up. And they're going to just stick together because they have this cloud helping them a little bit. He doesn't have a lot of shooting. He has lots of sprays, and then the Kraken, of course, has some nice long-range shooting. And then the Grey Lord Turnians, one of their abilities is Blizzard, where they can put a cloud effect on a model, and it stays with that model, so it'll give them concealment. So I'm basically trying to give my guys a bunch of defense buffs, because normally they're very low defense. So by being up on a hill and having some AoEs on them, they're going to be nice, healthy, high defense. So these Turnians will do the same thing. They'll give a cloud effect to the Demolition Core. In Cryx turn 1, he allocates a few focus to his Kraken because he wants to take some shooting. And he allocates 3 focus to his Deathjack. Now the Deathjack has a special rule that he gets, or sorry, he didn't allocate any, but he gets an extra focus for each arm that's not disabled. And this can take him above and beyond the 3 focus, so it's not actually allocating, it just gets him 2 more focus. He casts Ghost Walk on his Bane Thralls so they can ignore the trees. And then the Kraken can draw line of sight to that Man of War because, there's a line that he can draw it. But his gun falls a little short and then scatters the wrong way. And so it's not going to do any damage there. We forgot to do the other gun, but we're going to come back to that in a second. The Bane Thralls then run. They decide not to group together nice and closely because, well, my AoE 4 POW 15 might cause some problems for them. The Deathjack moves up into position as well. And then the Bile Thralls run up onto the hill to get a little extra defense buff, and also just to get in a better position for next turn. Turn 1 is all about positioning. You rarely do very much in terms of damage on turn 1, so it's really all about you getting to the right spot. We also have to think about the kill box, and that is that you have to stay outside of you have to stay 14 inches away from the edge of the board at the end of the second turn, or lose 2 points, or you give your opponent 2 points is really what it is. So he power boosts his Bonejack, and then the Bonejack runs to get in a position as it is an arc node. At the end of the turn, these AoEs disappear, and that is the end of round 1. So no casualties yet, just getting in a position. You can see we're nice and close though, so next turn there will be shooting and maybe even some assaulting. And then we're just going to have to jockey for position and see if we can grab these objectives, and at the same time try to kill the opponent's caster. So you can look forward to that in part 2. So go ahead and click on the annotation right here for part 2, or click the link below. And don't forget to subscribe and comment and like. Happy wargaming.